Thank you so much for stopping by my brand new channel. I'll be posting regular videos discussing faith, fashion, trending topics, and just some words of encouragement. I'm your host, Kyle Murphy, and this is Fits in Faith. All right, here we are, episode 1. I'm super psyched to get this thing going. Thank you so much for taking the time to check the new channel out. God has been really laying it on my heart to get this thing going. Been praying about it, and the pieces have been coming together. So I'm excited to kick this thing off. Like I said, this channel will be fashion, faith based. So how the videos will work is I'll be trying to post weekly, sometimes bi-weekly. We know how life can get in the way and get crazy. But God is in control. He's laid a lot of awesome messages on my heart that I want to share with you guys. So most videos will be probably 10 to 15 minutes long. The first half will be focused on fashion and trending topics, like I said, and just whatever, just kick it with you guys, whatever comes to mind. We'll chop it up for a little bit, and then the second half will be like a challenge that God has laid on my heart, something that really helped me that I'll share with you guys, and this will just be spirit led. So we're just going to hang out for a little bit, and I pray that if these episodes are a blessing to you, that you'll subscribe and keep supporting, tell your friends about it, and So I thought, first episode just be kind of like an intro video. This one might be a little bit longer, so just kind of get to know me a little bit. Like I said, my name is Kyle Murphy. I am living up in the Twin Cities of Minnesota area, Skull Vikings, right? Don't get me started. Us Viking fans are tough. We've been through it all. If you know, you know. But the Viking slogan is maybe next year. We'll get them next year. But yeah. So been living up here in Twin Cities, Minnesota for since I was about 14, 15 years old. I grew up a preacher's son, and my dad, he is evangelist Dr. Daryl Murphy. He's been preaching since before I was born, and what he does is he travels full time, and he does special meetings, youth conferences, missions conferences. He does summer camps, week-long revivals all across the country. He's been faithfully preaching the word for, I think, going on around 35 years, I want to say. We were based out of Oklahoma City, Oklahoma. That's kind of where they started their ministry. And growing up, I traveled with them full time. And my mom, she homeschooled me. And we traveled across the country. And we saw some times, and God really blessed and saw a lot of people come to know Christ, and so it was an awesome childhood. And we moved up here when I was about 15 years old, and I went to a school here and got into playing baseball. Baseball was my passion. I love baseball with all my heart, and that's what I aspired to be one day, was a big league pitcher. And I actually got to play some college baseball, and God had other plans. I kind of drifted away from him a little bit and lost my sight of Christ and the things of God. Kind of got in with the wrong crowd, and it was kind of a dark time. But I got sidetracked, got into partying a little bit, and drinking, and things that shouldn't do. And the devil, he's out there. He's like a roaring lion, right? Seeking whom he may devour. And us ministry kids and kids that grow up in the church, there's a big target on our backs. And any of you that are watching, you can definitely relate. But so I was going through that dark time, and I remember specifically one night, just crying out to God. I mean, even though I was so far from Him and my heart was so cold, I cried out, like, God, I need help. I need you to intervene in my life, because I couldn't do it on my own. And it was actually amazing looking back at that. That was around 8 years ago. And He heard that prayer, and it was just miraculous how He worked. It was around that time where I started to get sick. I started to get really, really sick, really weak, and it's kind of gross, but it's important for the story. But as I was pitching in baseball, I got a lot of ingrown toenails, and I had one that was really bad and really gross. It was really infected, and it was starting to make me really sick. And I tried kind of covering it up, and I'll get better. I'll it'll heal itself, whatever. And I know there's an illustration for that somewhere, but I got so sick to the point where I was having trouble even standing up and walking. And I remember that night, my dad was out of town preaching, but my grandpa and my uncle came over to the house, and my mom was like, we need to load him up and take him to the ER. And that night, that was the turning point. That saved my life that night. And they took me into the ER, and they ran some tests, and they were like, we need to admit you to the hospital. And so they took me by ambulance to a bigger hospital. And I always kind of relate in that moment, like in that ambulance, it was kind of my Jonah and the whale moment, if you will, and if you wail. But I remember that was kind of my come to Jesus moment. Like, God, this is really serious. It started hitting home. Like, I may not get a shot and walk out of here. Like, this might be something really bad. And I cried out to Him, and I've never felt closer to God in that moment. I'll never forget it. But I was like, God, I know you are a God of mercy. I know you're a God of second chances. And I know I've used my second chance up, but if you intervene for me, if you step in and rescue me here, give me one more chance, I won't waste it. And so the rest of that night was kind of a blur. They admitted me to the hospital, and I actually stayed in the hospital for close to a month. And it was a few days after that where I was completely immobile from the neck down. I was totally paralyzed. I couldn't lift my head, but I could turn my head, and I was like slurring my words when I talked, and I remember as I went through tests, I went through MRIs, EKGs, spinal taps, ultrasounds, a plethora of other tests that I really can't remember, but those are the ones that stand out. And the doctor would write. There was this big whiteboard, that I like I'm laying in my bed right now, and the wall's behind me, and there was a big whiteboard on the wall that I was facing, and he had written all the possible diagnoses that they were looking into, and there were some bad ones on there. Cancer was on there, ALS was on there, MS, several things that were either terminal or a very hard recovery, and not 100% recovery. And I remember I just had to stare at that all day and just all you can do is pray in those times. And I'm sure a lot of you, watching this video, you've been in those situations where there's nothing else you can do but pray and trust. And that's exactly what I did. And even though I was so far from God, I was like not giving up. I was praying, and my family was there, and they were praying around me. And I remember on Thanksgiving Day, actually, and this was in 2014, doctors came in and was like, it's Thanksgiving Day and you have something to be really thankful for today. We have your diagnosis and you're going to make a recovery. And I was like, yes. I was almost jumped out of my bed and I was so excited. And they diagnosed me with Guillain-Barré syndrome, or GBS, or French polio is kind of like the slang, what they call it. He said, we're going to treat you here, and it's going to be a long road to recovery, but after about a year, you'll be able to stand up. And it was like bittersweet, because saw that light at the end of the tunnel, but it was just so far away. But I was thankful. It was Thanksgiving. I was thankful. God said, here's your second chance. But you're going to have to put in some work. You're going to have to earn this second chance. And so that's what I did. And I actually got to recover at home. We had a physical therapist in our church. He was a godsend. One of my personal heroes. He was great. And so I got to recover at home, and we did physical therapy, occupational therapy. Side note, like anyone in the medical field, I have nothing but respect for anyone in the medical field. Like, you guys are the true heroes. I've seen firsthand what you guys have to deal with and go through, and it's just, they're underappreciated in my opinion. But anyways, so I began my long road to recovery, and it was about 9 months before I stood up with a security belt assisted. And I like to tell people, like, in my everyday life, when it comes up, God gives me an opportunity to try to encourage someone. I tell them, like, GBS is like hitting a reset button on anything you can possibly imagine, like anything you can think of, right? Like tying your shoes took months of therapy, holding a toothbrush, holding a fork, standing, walking, all that stuff, running. But it also taught me to never take anything for granted. Like, if you get anything from this video, just be thankful. Like, you got out of bed today. It might have been a rough day. You might be going through a rough trial right now, but it's temporary. And I actually wrote a book about my journey, and I titled it Temporary, because that's what my mom would always tell me, when I was completely helpless. I went from being a college athlete to, not being able to use the restroom by myself or feed myself. I sat in one spot for nearly 9 months. So just be appreciative. And, I thank God every day for my mom and my dad and my siblings. I couldn't have made it through it without them. But I learned a lot. And like I said, I wrote that book. It's an e-book. It's on Amazon. It's called Temporary by me, Kyle Murphy. If I wrote it, trust me, super easy read. You could probably read it in an hour. It's not a long read, but I pray that'll be a blessing. And it's just meant to encourage. And that's one thing. It makes going through that so much more worth it. Just being encouraging to people. And so that's what I strive to do. And since then, a little update. Like I said, I wrote the book. I had made a goal list when I was paralyzed of things that I wanted to accomplish, like physical things. Like one was running a 5K, and I accomplished that just a couple years ago. Writing my book, just like things like that. And you can do that too, like in your everyday life. It's just something to strive for, work toward. But and so that's in a nutshell my story. And I even got into amateur boxing after that. So it's I'm living proof that if you work hard and just keep grinding, stay encouraged, you can if you set out to achieve it, you can achieve it. And it may take some time, but you just got to stick with it. But so that's a little bit about me. Like I said, I'll try to post as much as I can, probably once a week. I'm going to try to once a week, if not bi-weekly. But if you subscribe, awesome. Appreciate you. And this episode, like I said, is a little bit longer, but they won't be this long. But yeah, thanks for stopping by. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.